I am live. Okay. Um, Reason why I'm doing this live. I had some stuff that I planned to do um, in a video that was curated or edited or prepared or whatever. Um, but a couple of things happened. Um, the material that I was going to use for that became inaccessible seemingly overnight. Uh, Chrome changed things on me, so now I can't search my bookmarks, and I've got a lot of bookmarks, a lot, thousands. And and the guys whose website I planned on using, he's taken it down to redo it or whatever. So um, it's one of those things where if you don't watch something every day, it's an old website. It doesn't have updates, so it's not like it's got an RSS feed. It's from the '90s or whatever. Anyway, um, so I just figured, whatever. I'll do it live for a couple of reasons. I need the practice. I've got the time, and I'm trying to contribute a little bit to getting people from talking about all that crap with fighting and all that. So, um, I hear a lot of people or read a lot of people from time to time talk about the idea. Well, people just come and go, whatever. Um, uh, it feels right. I make a game I make this mechanic and I just play with it till it feels right. Okay, whatever. But I I always found that reference material was an easier way to do it. SWAG, by the way, if you're not familiar with the acronym, means super wild ass gas or scientific wild ass gas. Some people use it in that phrase, and that's what I'll just do it till it feels. But why? Uh, why not just use what's accurate if you're going for accuracy? In the 70s and 80s, the intent of most war game design uh, was to try to, emulate reality as closely as possible. Ay, ay, ay. So, but and that doesn't mean super simulation crunch or anything like that. Just if I'm if I'm simulating a ball being thrown, how fast can a normal human being throw a ball? Look it up. So, uh, when it comes to things like hex crawls or war games, figuring out how far people can march or something like that, all that material is around. And I was going to show you how you could get to it on this particular site. Whoa, the hell! But somebody's anyway. Sorry, I was just distracted by something that came up on my screen. Sorry. But I was going to give you the website. It was called the Big Book of War, something like that. But anyway, it had all these reference material in it, and you could find it other places, probably Scribd or something like that. Most of it was military. When we wanted to make our own war game set, we went and got these reference materials to help. How far can you march in a day? You know, okay. Well, if you can march that, okay. So say my time scale is 2 minutes per turn. Okay. Well, so I found out how far I can march in an hour. Well, just with a little bit of math, I can reduce that down to an average for a 2 minute turn and have a starting point instead of going, well, I'll just play with it till it feels right. And because normally what I see with a lot of that kind of thing is, well, I did what feels right, and then you go and you make the game, and people play it, and then after a while, people go, well, this one thing here. Oh, yeah, I kind of didn't really, I just kind of guessed on that. Maybe we'll have to make some addendum or some change or something like that. But if you start with the cold hard facts, then you don't have to do that sort of thing. So I always look at making a game as like a simulation. It doesn't matter, whether you're simulating a submarine or an aircraft or a tank or whatever. You start out with basic physics, and that's not malleable or changes. Figure out the acceleration of gravity and stuff like that. And a lot of this old military uh, reference material is free if you look hard enough. There's a lot of people selling it. at bookstores and stuff, but it's free if you look around hard enough, and it gives you everything you need. They went around and tested all this stuff. How far can a platoon march in uh, on beach sand, or rocky ground or whatever, and they write it down. They test it, and they give an average, and they think of everything. Well, what if it's 72 degrees? Okay, that doesn't affect them. What if it's 85 degrees and 100% humidity? That affects them. You may not want that kind of granularity in your game. I'm just saying it's there if you do. Everything you could possibly think of and more is in these studies. You just look them up and you get all sorts of things. How far can a guy see? How far can a guy see at night? Now, how would that have any bearing on a fantasy setting? Well, not, obviously they don't know how far the infravision of an elf is or whatever, but when it comes to hex crawls, it's still applicable. How far can a guy march? How what's the average guy capable of carrying in a pack? Things like that could still be applied. How far can a human being see a campfire in low light conditions or foggy conditions? It's out there. There's an army. In fact, I've got most of that material. Problem is, I have it in print, and I wasn't about to go put a camera on it for you to read. I wanted to go to that website I mentioned earlier in the stream so I could screen share it with you, but it was gone. But well, people are coming and going. Yeah. Anyway, that was basically it. I wanted to show you that stuff. I wanted to show you how you could apply it. And it's very functional. If you're making modern games too, a lot of that stuff is very usable in that situation too, for obvious reasons. But they've got all sorts of. And if you're going further back, let's say not everything has to be from World War II as far as reference material. It's a little bit harder to find, but if you go back far enough, you can find things about the Civil War. If you look outside of the United States, you can go to Great Britain and find a lot of 18th century or 1800s, 19th century, I should say, 1800s published stuff. That'll get you into wagon loads, stuff like that. If you look hard enough, you can find studies about cavalry, horse cavalry from both America and Great Britain. Easy to find in Great Britain, but I've even found German sources on that, and they'll tell you how much, say you're a fantasy setting and you've got hirelings and a wagon train, through a hex crawl or something like that. It'll tell you how much grain you need per horse. Again, maybe that's a detail you'd rather not address in your rules, but if you want to address logistics, instead of going, well, let's figure it out or let's guess or something like that, you could just find these sources, and they'll give you a concrete answer. It's an average. You'll always hear some anecdote from somebody going, well, this one time it was an exception, right? There's always exceptions, but you'll get the average, and the average will be enough to use for your system. So I just think it's a time saver, and it leads to being more accurate without complicating the system with extra rules, just by using accurate reference material. But the super wild ass guess can be just that. It'd be a wild ass guess. It's way off, So I really wish I had the ability to present you with this stuff. I had names of all of it. I don't have that in my head anymore, but it was going to show you what stuff. But if you use search terms, or you go to Scrib or something like that, Scribd or whatever else contemporary competitor to it that has that kind of material available, you'll be able to find it. And maybe this guy will get the site back up and I'll be able to link it to you. So um, I can get it out of the archives at some point and show it to you as well. So I expect it to have at least a few people show up. I've been averaging 3, but I don't know if anybody's around for questions or whatever. Like I say, I did this off the cuff because all my visual aids and websites that I was going to use in my video went and left me. So there's probably other places you can find that stuff other than the military, but the military is the easiest way to find it. And I've heard people say that, well, that's copyrighted material. Is it? Do you think it can? Here's one thing I know about copyright. I'll never give you legal advice. I'll never try to tell you that I'm a legal expert, but I did do my own research on copyright stuff. And if you're looking to do copyright or doing to publishing, you should do it yourself. But this much I know, and this much I'm comfortable saying: whomever holds the copyright is the guy or the gal that has to make the claim against you. And even if government material was copyrighted, they don't care. They don't care that some kid put it in a war game. It's not like it's top secret. How far can a dude carry 80 pounds a day? Nobody cares. So you just go ahead and use that stuff, And it's not like you're putting the book in your book. You're just taking the information out of the reference book and applying it to your system. So you can get all sorts of stuff out of it that way. And from individuals all the way up to whole armies. How far can an army march? Something like that. I think it's about depending on whether they want you to march in rhythm or not. It varies about 11 to 15. But again, don't miles per day or something like that. But don't let people go, well, it depends on this. Yeah, there's some variance, but not much. People haven't changed that much as far as their capabilities. Sure, we all vary. Some people are stronger and better and all that at athletics than others, but so that gives you an idea that sort of stuff. Where else do I see swag applied? Usually in technical things, but even armor. I've seen people guess what armor can do and things like that. This is where the other thing I was going to talk about is going in what they call the dark or deep web. Now, if you're unfamiliar, there's a lot of horror stories. That's how you get hacked, and there's evil things out there, and they make these terms make it sound like you're going into some dirty back alley. What it is generally is that 20-ish years, I don't remember the exact date, but it was 20-ish years ago, Google decided to just stop listing 2/3 of the internet. Just cut it out. And now you can't access a lot of that if you don't use some sort of different tool. But there was a lot of great information on those old websites. And one of them, there's nothing nefarious about it if it even still exists, but there was one that had a very scientific approach to how much damage different types of armor would mitigate against different types of attack, from stabbing to slashing to even early firearms. And it did so through experimentation and through mathematics. And I'm not saying applying that kind of mathematics so that your players have to use it. I'm saying using that kind of material so that you can come up with an accurate answer instead of going, well, this feels right because I read this one time. One thing that if you're doing any type of analysis, especially of history, is anecdotes will, there's a lot of people go, well, Sergeant Johnny Smith was in the 3rd Platoon in 1942. So if he tells me this story, it's God's honest fact. And I'm not saying Johnny's a liar. I'm saying that anecdotes always omit very specific factors into that one unique story. Whereas you want to get some, an average. So it's better to go to the dry technical stuff, even though it's boring. It's fun to sit down and listen to Johnny tell a story if he's willing to do it. And God bless, and you're living history. I'm not invalidating it. I'm saying it's just not a good source of scientific uh, material. So, but there's a lot of those kind of things out there. There was a guy named Bonnet or something like that from Denmark that had an amazing site about interior ballistics and all that stuff. And that one you could still find, but not through Google. So there's all sorts of really neat websites and material. It's another one that's not military. There's a guy named Carlucci that made a book called Ballistics something or other, and that goes through everything. Like if you remember Phoenix Command, the RPG Phoenix Command, it was kind of a tactical warfare system that you could attach to your RPG or whatever. Anyway, it was extremely complicated. But if you go in the back of that, you'll see Carlucci's book listed, for battlefield medicine and ballistics and all that stuff. So, and it's just good stuff to use, even if some of it seems like it's way too much for what you want to do. That's fine, but you'll still get some idea on how to do it without twisting your noodle into knots trying to guess it. I just always found that approach was a lot faster. And that's how they used to do it in war games all the time, as I said at the beginning of this thing. So for people that were looking and the OSR types are going, well, we're trying to figure out what they were thinking back in 72 or whatever. Well, when it came to wargaming, that was it. You had some basic stuff you had to start with. What's your ground scale? What's your unit scale? What's your time scale? That kind of set the parameters for your design. If you're usually the smaller the unit group, the shorter the time span. Usually, the smaller the ground scale as well. So that they were kind of like a stereo equalizer. Each one, kind of played off the other. Everything came from that. Another thing is that I see a lot of people talking about is, well, I'm tired of this is really so much about reference or super wild ass guess. It's just more about the way they used to do things and my design philosophies, or at least which are rooted in those old things, because I grew up in that stuff. War Games Association in Milwaukee, and talking to people named Zimmerman and Meyer that made the war game On Grief, and having chats with Frank Chadwick as a kid when I was going to Gen Con, stuff like that. But as far as dice resolution, and then I guess it's a matter of taste, but everything back then was based on a percentage chance, because that's how it was displayed to people in the reference material I'm talking about. And in my mind, it's the easiest, and if you're a newbie to the game, or to the whole war game scene, what's the best and easiest way for people to conceptualize, like a shot, making a bullseye or hitting a target? Well, yeah, you got a 50-50 chance. Well, everybody, I know what that means. Not a very good chance, but maybe. Well, you got a 90% chance. Well, then I'm probably going to do it. So it was just a great way to organize the information. And you don't have to use, then people talked about bell curves and probability theory and all that. Well, and if you use percentile die, it's a flat distribution, and same with D20 and all that. Yeah, true. But when I used tabletop wargaming when I was in the United States Army, we used percentile, because we didn't need all that. We just needed a small amount of random. Yes, every result had the same percentage chance of showing up, but you didn't know which one it was going to be. That's all you needed. So that's all we need. That's all we use. But if you wanted a little bit more in the way of random, and you don't like D20, maybe 3D6 or something like that. But I don't. To me, it always seemed like another real extra load intellectually or brain wise to come up with something other than just a percentile chance. Even 3d6, you can break that down to percentile mathematically. So, guy named, if you're not familiar, maybe he's here, or maybe he has listened, or maybe you know him. The basic expert was just talking about that the other day on the stream, and you want that bell curve distribution. That's why you'd use 3d6s. But there's only so many ways to skin a cat. I see a lot of people saying, well, I just like a different combat resolution because I get bored with the same thing. Okay. But to me, it's just reinventing the wheel. I think that, but I'm different than most, I guess, in that realm, in that I like to have everything the same. If everything that I ever played ran off a percentile dice, I'd be fine with it. No problem. So, but as a designer, I don't move away from percentiles. I may, present them in a different dice distribution, but that's it. Because it just makes it easier. Any weapons material you look at, eventually you'll find, this weapon has this percent. They used to call them PKs, percentage chance to kill. It was a rating that they gave weapons in war games. So I did a lot of work in war games while I was in different uniforms, not just the military. I went to military school. They pushed war games on us there, and I was in CAP, and we played war games for fun there. They didn't really make us do war games, but and then I did some in the service. It was really interesting and funny when they started pulling out 1/285th miniatures, which I'd been playing with as a kid, and now they're going to use them for a training tool. So if you want to see that in action, if you're not a serviceman and you don't know what I'm talking about, the best place I can send you for that is to the Fort Benning website. Go to the Armor Magazine section, and I guess I could have turned on my screen share for that. But anyway, if you go to the back issues, January, February 1993, it's a red cover with a kind of modern helmet looking on the front, if I recall correctly. If you page through that, there's an article about tabletop exercises, and you'll see a master sergeant or a first sergeant or something writing an article about war games. In fact, a couple of them are from a guy I knew. He lists a couple of war games as that you might want to use as a platoon leader to train your platoon, and one of them was from Gary Bloom, who was a fellow that ran a nice war game shop in Milwaukee that I used to play war games with. Got some of my first sets from him. And there's another thing about war game design, or any design for that matter. A guy named Jim Dunnigan used to say this all the time: plagiarize, plagiarize, plagiarize. That doesn't mean legally. It doesn't mean stealing. It just means that there's only so many ideas in the toolbox, and you just take them and you add them together the way you feel comes out the right way. So there's nothing wrong with taking an idea, that's already been used and repurposing it, because you can only skin a cat so many ways. So one of the games I played with Gary was just a derivative of the old On Grief, which he learned from the two cats I talk about from time to time, Zimmerman and Meyer. They were a publisher in Milwaukee and then Sheboygan, Wisconsin. I'm a Wisconsin guy. So, but all that stuff was, well, most of it was percentile based as far as combat resolution. So there's just some ideas on how to save a headache and guesswork, and that was the premise of the video I was going to do, and show you the material. But I just figured I'd just talk, because I like to talk. I see a couple people in here. Feel free to respond. I like to chat as well. Right now I've got nothing but time on my hands. So let's see what else. And this isn't limited to ground. It's a little bit more difficult to find stuff on aeronautics and naval stuff, but you can find it. You can find it for ships that go back quite a ways too, and that can be used if you're a Seventh Sea person or you're making some sort of pirate RPG or uh, not much to do once you get back far enough. It's there's not much science involved in the combat like you know Vikings and all that, um, but as far as navigation and how far something travels and stuff like that, you can find that kind of thing. And if you're into World War II, there's a whole website I can show you that'll blow your mind about how much depth it goes into on combat and things like that. How armor mitigates cannonballs and all sorts of things like that. Um, Air Force, the same thing. And here's another one. Here's another one. Doesn't have anything to do with military, but you could use military or even fire department stuff. I've seen people use. How you know if you want how much damage would what would happen if a dragon you know breathed on a wooden village? Most people go, I don't need to know exactly how it would work. I'll just say stuff started on fire. Sure, that's easy enough, and most people are okay with that. But if you really wanted to get a little more granularity and you could see how fast material burns in real life, on average, things like that, So how certain metals react to instantly being frozen. Would it crack? Would it thaw out and stay in, you know, bonded, things like that. So a lot of this is probably coming from a perspective of depth and detail that most people aren't interested in anymore. I am old and played old games, but I just in general the reference stuff seems just like the easier route for me, and I just thought it would be for other people that go, well, I just keep trying to. I play whack a mole with these ideas till I get them right. So, um, but if there's anybody that's got any questions, did I make any sense? Did I make no sense? Am I boring? I just started doing this. So I decided that at the end of my talks, I would ask people that were brave enough to still be here what they thought about what they just heard for the last 20 minutes or so, or whatever it was. Usually people leave before I get the opportunity. So I thought I'd try. Anybody got anything to say that's out there? No? Okay. Well, um, here's the one site that will arrive in the future. It's a site of the past. It's being reworked. And I'll just I think I can put the link in my own chat anyway. So here it is. I've never done this before. So, oh, yep, sure. So that's going to, what did the guy say? He didn't give any time frame. So one of those things that somebody gets to when they feel like it or have the time. But anyway, he's making some changes. And, but when it comes back, there'll be a plethora of things, especially if you're looking to do stuff that's a little bit more modern, but not everything. There's things in there that'll work for fantasy as well. So, well, 30 minutes is more than I expected. I figured I'd talk for 10 minutes, but I saw some people come in. I always hope to have a conversation with people who are around, but uh, going once, going twice, 3 times. Any comments, questions, criticisms? Donations? I don't know if I can even take a donation. I don't really want a donation. I want money, but not from you. What I do isn't worth money, at least not yet. But if you're feeling generous, maybe I should put out a tin cup. Anyway, It's about the majority of it. Just a quick little thing to kill some time, try to meet some people. I like to interact. I like to talk. Try again next time. Thanks for listening. For whoever's out there, we'll see you again soon.